Assalamu alaikum. You're listening to the New Beginnings podcast. No fluff, no holding back, just honest conversations about your journey as a new Muslim.
Brought to you by New Beginnings, the platform that aims to support new Muslims on their journey through Islam, from the Shahada and beyond.
Now, James, we've asked you to come up with some points that you would really like heritage Muslims to know and to understand. And I'm sure Bilal and myself, we also have things that we can contribute to this discussion. So can we bring up your first point?
So my first point is all around culture. So, for example, when I came to Islam, it was very kind of different for me. The local Islamic culture back then was mainly Somali and Yemeni. So those communities have been around here for hundreds of years. So it's just part of the landscape really. Now the family that I kind of came into Islam in was my friend's family, which is Mauritian. So very kind of they wear what British people wear. It's very, very culturally similar in many ways. And one thing I would like people to know is just like you can. It makes things very easy for you to understand that you don't have to follow the other people's culture that they have maintained. So, for example, I'm a Welshman. I've come into Islam, and that basically means I can still wear the clothes that I've always worn. I can still wear jeans to the mosque. I can still wear a t-shirt to the mosque, and still wear the clothes that I wear. I can still have Sunday roast on a Sunday. It's not mandatory for me to just because I see this quite a lot, which is quite funny now because it never used to be this way. You see a lot of converts will come into Islam and they'll be wearing thawbs, sort of the long kind of gown that kind of men wearing sometimes, and it's it's not my culture to wear that type of clothing, and it's quite funny because you can't win either way. If you wear that, look at that, look at that Muslim. He's obviously trying to push Islam on everybody else. He's that's what he's up to. He's trying to do that. But if you do it my way as well, which is, I haven't outwardly, obviously I've got a beard, but I wear what I wear, which is same as what everyone else around me wears. But on the flip side of that, you get, you are hiding it. It's conspiracy. You're it's some kind of crypto infiltrator Muslim that is kind of trying to. I don't know. I'm not actually sure what they think I'm trying to do, but it just seems to be a surprise when I say, "Well, I'm Muslim," and that's that. What I want people to know is that the differences are philosophical, and when you're talking about Islam, it's as you go into different elements of your culture, it's there are gulfs. There are massive differences in how you approach things, and those are revealed over time because the philosophy you have, that is Islam, and what you are commanded to do, and your adab and different parts of Islam will put you in direct opposition to non-Muslims. So you don't have to worry about kind of proving your Islam through what you wear, because the proof of Islam in what you believe will come out other, somewhat bigger parts.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, because it's 100% nail on the head in terms of you can still maintain your cultural identity, being Muslim. I think also it's really funny because as a heritage, a very sort of from a physical perspective, very obvious Muslim woman, I'm brown, I'm wearing a hijab from the South Asian community. It's very obvious that I'm a Muslim woman. Now, when I worked in sales for like 13 years, and going into a corporate office in a very quintessentially British English town where I was the only Muslim in this corporate field, people would just judge me because they'd be like, "Oh, we expected you to be really tame and quiet because you wear a hijab and you're a Muslim, right?" And I'm the loudest person in the room. Sheikh Bilal will tell you, right? He had to get used to it. It took him 4 years. Still not there. No, but like, I'm not your typical what people sometimes, they consider, they have this stereotype of Muslim women, and I'm the opposite. And even growing up, I was told you should be seen, not heard. But I was like, "Oh, mom, you birthed the wrong child." that's not me. You'll hear me before you see me. And yeah, okay, I understand that like you said, you talked about etiquette, adab. There is adab, and you've got to sort of like read the room. I'm not going to walk into every room loudly and be crazy, but I still have a personality and I can still be my own person, like within the folds of Islam. And that's kind of what you're saying as well. So it goes hand in hand. What you're saying is I can still look a certain way and dress a certain way and maintain my cultural identity and still be a practicing Muslim. And they don't, they both can coexist, which I think people forget about sometimes. And then, like you said, as a convert, especially living in the West, I think living in the West, and we look at someone, we don't know if, especially men, we don't know if they're Muslim or not. From just by looking at them. So when you eventually reveal that, James, it can be like, "Oh my God, you're a Muslim," and I understand that because I've got to hold hands up. I'm guilty of reacting that way sometimes, but it's a joyful, like, "Oh wow, you're a Muslim. We have something in common." It's amazing, but it's really yeah, you're right. You can definitely maintain that identity, and even like I said, as born Muslims, people have an expectation or a stereotype that I don't know if any of you guys had that before you became Muslim. Please do share if you did. But then, yeah, it's just nice to be able to break some of those stereotypes, like you said. So
it's funny because one of my first experiences of Islamophobia came as a result of this kind of lack of obviousness as a Muslim. I was very new into Islam. My intention at the time was to join the military, so I used to go away with air cadets and that kind of thing. So I went off to Germany, and it was just at the end of maybe in the middle of the Kosovo War. Very much like kind of the Muslims are on that side, the Serbs are on the other. And, I felt very confident that, basically my people were my people. And I went over to this base, and I was there with the people that I'd gone with. And the moment the message dropped that, I was Muslim, and I've never experienced anything like that, to know that, yes, we look the same, but you are definitely not of us. You are definitely not liked. And that was, very a profound moment. And I really was quite affected by that, because our relationship was very different from then on in. And obviously, as you can imagine, it was very long. I was with these people for over 2 weeks. And I was like, right, okay, we're obviously not the same thinking. And it was a very telling moment. Didn't end up going in the military, which was very good. Meant that obviously I avoided a lot of the later problems that happened, and I dread to think where I would have ended up if I had. It can have very surprising impacts. So I try to let people know I'm Muslim very early on in our relationship, so that it's basically, I'm going to go off and do this because I'm Muslim. and then there's no kind of feeling of betrayal. How could you hide this? I just think people, they don't like the surprise. They don't like the revelation that they've been tricked. I'm not trying to trick them. It's just, I'm me. So strange experiences.
We do have a podcast where we spoke in depth about Islam and culture and converting to Islam and dealing with culture. And I think culture is one that many non-convert Muslims, they struggle with trying to define the lines between what is actually Islam, what is actually culture. But there are certain challenges where the lines get blurred. Sometimes converts, they can come into the religion as well, and they might see certain practices and think that, oh, that's Islam, but actually it's not. It's just a part of that person's particular culture.
Yeah, just on the topic of about also, well, just what James was saying about appearing Muslim, in terms of modes of dress and wanting non-converts to understand that part of our identity. I think that there is, number one, I think that there is a lot of virtue in Muslim men dressing in a way that is identifiably Muslim. It doesn't have to be cultural dress, but it should be identifiably modest dress. And yes, it can be jeans and a t-shirt, but the t-shirt should be, there are rules about men's dress as well that I think are often ignored, and a lot of people aren't aware of them. But also for sisters, the pressure to adopt the hijab the minute that you take your shahada, which is not something cultural, but the way of wearing it can be very cultural. And this idea that, okay, you're Muslim now, you have to look like a Muslim. But what does that mean? I followed a German lady on Instagram she wears niqab, she fully covers and she veils. And she talks about a lot of different aspects of hijab and veiling and so on, and especially in a place like Germany. And she always tells women, you looking as though you're Muslim is, of course, important, but when it's safe to do so, and when you're comfortable doing so, and when you're confident doing so. And then she said, but if you're not wearing a scarf on your head, that doesn't mean that you're not wearing hijab. If you're wearing something that covers everything except your hair, that's 80% of your hijab. Your hair is the remaining 20%. If you want to cover your face as well, okay, yes, you can do that. You can not do that, whatever. But she was talking about how, you can wear whatever you want to wear as long as it fulfills the guidelines that we have about Islamic dress. And if you don't do it completely, but you do part of it, that is still hijab. It's not a complete hijab, but it's getting there, and you're taking things step by step. And I think that that's something that coming off, just bouncing off what James said about cultural dress, women get pressured to put on a scarf and then to put on a jilbab or an abaya or whatever the current terminology is for an outer garment. We get told that we have to drape ourselves in all of this fabric to exist as Muslim women, but as long as we're covered, we're covered. And that's the important thing, But I think eventually our goal, both men and women, should be to be visibly Muslim and to be proudly visibly Muslim. But it takes a while to get there, and nobody should be pressurized into doing that.
I think having symbols as well, so that we can be recognized as Muslims. So many of us, when we first become Muslim and do the Shahada, we want to be recognized as a Muslim in the community. So we might change our names. We might start wearing a hat or wearing certain symbols just so we can be recognized as Muslims. That's fine as well. One of these scholars of Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah, he actually says that when Muslims go to non-Muslim lands, that they shouldn't actually stick out. They shouldn't stick out amongst people, and they should try to assimilate customs, including the dress. And he actually says including the dress of the people in that land. And he deems that as more conducive to the Muslim fitting in with that society and maybe safer. Maybe there were safety issues as well at that time. You're speaking about 700 years ago, so it's a very different time as well, where you don't have as many liberties as we do now. But it's interesting. It's an interesting thing that he mentioned.
That's interesting, because I know a lot of converts who maybe in the early days of our journeys, we've been sort of like, I'm going to wear a khimar and an abaya, and I'm going to look, or I'm going to wear, like how the Somali sisters dress with the very, very long khimars and everything. And they want to blend in with the Muslim community, but then we're not used to that. And a lot of sisters I know have sort of come back the other way and are more likely to wear a long skirt and a blouse along with their headscarf. Everything is still covered, but it is definitely Western style. And there is sort of a developing fashion, as it were, amongst, I think, especially amongst British convert sisters, of how we dress and what we consider to be an acceptable mode of dress, as opposed to
Islam sets out limits of modesty and nakedness, but it doesn't dictate the style of how that should be.
Well, the funny thing is, you also get, if you do wear a thobe, you do avoid the inevitable "Walaikum" response from some people, which is.
Do people actually say that?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that
I get
is
that.
Just the height of rude.
So, yeah, that's what I always kind of end up with when I get a "Walaikum" response. I always go.
I think Bilal, you might need to explain this for those who don't understand.
Yeah, so they don't say the full "Salam alaikum" back to you because they think that you're not Muslim. So even myself, if I go out, in like normal Western dress, and I say salam to somebody, I might not get a response, or they might just say hi, but one of the responses they might say is wa alaikum and to you, which is like a response that we generally give to somebody who's not a Muslim.
You can understand it in the street to a degree, but when it's in the mosque as well, you're kind of like, really, dude, really?
I once gave salams to somebody, and her reply was, "Are you Muslim?" And I was in a mosque in a hijab and had just prayed. So yeah, it happens. SubhanAllah, it happens. But yeah,
it's funny because I get asked where I am in the valleys, a huge Turkish population. So I get asked in Turkish a lot, "Are you Turkish?" But I always get wa alaikum salam. But if I go into the city and into Cardiff,
you need the green hat. It's the green hat that you need. that will definitely get you full wa alaikum salam.
Rooji, from your point of view, as somebody who is, you do interact with a lot of converts, but before you started, getting to know a lot of converts, what would you have thought was the tell that someone is Muslim?
So before I discovered New Beginnings, I knew no converts. I knew no converts to Islam. I didn't know anybody because of the community that I live in. Pretty much everyone, I might have come across people, but I wouldn't have known. You know what I mean? That they weren't. I think growing up, my dad's friend married a non-Muslim, and his daughter was the only convert that I knew of. But I was a kid. I was a child. That was it. So, and it's not something I've really thought about. If I'm being completely honest with you, it just never crossed my mind. And then one day on Instagram, I saw this organization that was looking for people to support converts to Islam through the month of Ramadan by inviting them to break their fasts with them, or cooking for them, or like a parcel. And I was like, oh, well, I'm a foodie. I'd love to do that. That would be amazing. I was like, oh, that's great. And honestly, I had no idea. I never even considered what a tell would be, what it's just something that it never crossed my mind. And then to have all of this knowledge come to you, and then also learn that the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, were all converts to Islam. It's just something that I wasn't taught as a child or growing up. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is literally what the Prophet, peace be upon him, came here to do. And yet I've lived all my life, 30 years of my life, not even thinking about people that weren't born into Islam. Yeah, when I was in school, my teacher in religious studies, Ari, right, when we used to be in school, every time we'd learn about Islam, she'd always ask me questions like I was the token Muslim in a Roman Catholic school, obviously. But I was like, I don't know the answer, miss. I don't know why we pray. I just didn't know these things. And so I've not really thought about it after New Beginnings, because whether somebody's Muslim or not, it's not like I'm looking for what is the telltale sign. It's not something I'm considering. I'm just meeting people where they're at. Do you know what I mean? I'm not like, oh, I wonder if this person's Muslim. Only if we've had a really deep conversation about something, or if I've actually interacted on a deeper level with somebody, I might think about it. But I think I'd know by that point if they're Muslim or not. The only time I do consider truly is when we have a New Beginnings parties, and we have the Eid parties and the retreat, and we have family members of converts coming to those events, and you don't know if somebody's Muslim, because of everyone interacts in such a beautiful way that you can't differentiate. Like, everyone's character, everyone's etiquette is so beautiful that sometimes, it doesn't really matter. but it's just nice for us to know. And that's the only time I've really considered it. And sometimes I don't get an answer, and that's okay.
No, thank you for sharing that with us. James, you had a couple other points that you wanted people to understand. Can we go to the second one?
Family and friends are basically your biggest challenges as a convert. And it's not when you convert to Islam. It's generally kind of when there's like kind of big family events, weddings, funerals, anniversaries, that kind of stuff. And it's probably the same all over the UK, but there's like kind of a huge drinking culture. It has big, profound, and this is the gulf I was talking about earlier, where you look the same, you're the same person, nothing's changed apart from your religion. So you've come to Islam. And Islam walks you into a way of thinking where you are told different things. So, for example, when somebody dies in Islam, you go to the mosque and you find out somebody's died that day. The body's in the mosque. And you're like, well, do you want to follow? Do you want to take part in the janazah? And do you want to take part in the burial? So you've just turned up in the mosque and you go to the burial, and then you actively participate in burying that individual. Now, what I found is every now and again you'll get a family where dad was he's being buried, his son is there distraught, but never really knew anything about Islam, and his friends are there, but they're not Muslim. So you end up talking to them about that. For converts, what inevitably happens is your non-Muslim family or friends die under whatever the circumstances, and that is a hugely impactful state of affairs, because the community on our side of things that are not Muslim, they don't know what they're doing. I don't know if you've heard of these. They've got like these new pure funerals where they don't tell anyone. They just go off and cremate the body, and they don't tell anybody. And you're only told that the individual has died when you actively ask the relatives, "Oh, what's happened to so and so? Where is so and so? I haven't seen them in a while. Oh, they died. Don't tell anyone." And that is a new thing that is happening, a part of the culture. So during, for example, in my particular experience, my friend during COVID, but just after, just coming to the end of COVID, she died of cancer. Now, when she passed away, I was raising the fact that, well, you should bury her. You should bury her. Now, this is my perspective. As a Muslim, it's like you shouldn't abuse the body. You shouldn't break the bones. You shouldn't burn the person. You should treat the person with the same kind of respect and dignity that you would treat them with when they're alive. And the family disagreed with me, and she got cremated, and they were going to scatter her everywhere. And it was only stopped because her niece was like, where am I going to go? And they didn't do it. But there's a lot of making things up as they go, and it does lead to heated debate, conflict, because people don't know. They're like, well, this is my choice, or that was her choice. But the thing is, you're like, was it their choice? Did this get discussed? A lot of the time it's not discussed. And then when you have the funeral, then you have to, depending on your tradition, if you're looking on the more Irish side, there's the wake as well. Inevitably involves alcohol. It's just clashes again, so you end up not going to the wake. But for converts, this is very difficult. It's a very difficult time, because there's this definite difference in how things are handled. And I've spoken to a few people of knowledge on this, and responses I've gotten are they don't know what response to give, because generally I've asked people who are from outside of the UK who aren't in this scenario. So people are very kind of reticent to come back. And I've opted for the option of basically putting in the Islamic perspective of how you should be taken care of after death to people. And it's a huge sore point that isn't discussed. It's not talked about. It's for converts, it is brutal. There is very little in terms of you doing the right thing. So I don't know what you guys think about that, Amanda.
You've brought up a really interesting point that I've never really thought about, to be honest, because my approach has always been that if a person isn't Muslim, I have no say in how they're buried or cremated or whatever. That's none of my business. But when my own father passed away, he was cremated. My mum made that decision because that's what he wanted, apparently. And I really spiritually struggled with that. Interestingly, my mum in more recent years, getting on in years, bless her, and she has stated that she doesn't want to be cremated now. But again, that's, that is her choice to my mind. But what you've brought up is also something that I would really love for heritage Muslims to understand, which is when converts lose a family member and a close family member who isn't Muslim, usually a parent, could be a sibling, sometimes people will wade in and remind us that we're not allowed to make dua for them, that we're not allowed to pray for them. And I honestly can't think of something more insensitive that you could say to somebody who's just lost a family member, that you can't pray for them. First of all, nobody asked. Usually it's unsolicited advice. So first of all, nobody asked. But also, says who? Yes, we have hadith from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, saying that he couldn't ask God to intercede for his parents because they died as non-Muslims and so on. I understand that. But even just asking God to give you patience with what you're going through, asking God to, if there's any way that they could be interceded for, you can't help what's in your heart, and God knows what's in your heart. So to say to somebody that, it's wrong for them to be feeling that. I remember when my father died, somebody very unhelpfully reminded me that my period of mourning was 3 days, and that was all I got. And after that, I had to get back to normal. Like, how do you even deal with a comment like that I have to now get back to normal? Like, I have to forget that one of the most important people to me in my life, I have to forget about that. Really, I've had sisters come to me to say that they were told that they couldn't attend their grandmother's funeral, and it was their grandmother who had raised them because she wasn't Muslim. I've had people say that they believed that their relative who had passed away was Muslim because they had said the Shahada, they had declared their faith, but there was nobody around to witness it, so they weren't Muslim, and so they couldn't attend the funeral, and so on and so on and so on. All of this stuff is just, I really would ask, maybe you mean well in saying these things, and maybe you're trying to be supportive, but it is not supportive. And it is actually very painful to be said something like that too. So yeah, these kind of things I think are very hard for non-converts to maybe grasp, because they're fortunate in that all of their family members are Muslim. Their family members will have an Islamic burial. They will have a janazah, a funeral prayer. They will be prayed over. They will be washed before they're buried. And that is a privilege. That is such a blessing to not have to have that question in your mind about your relatives. So I'd like a little bit more, the word sensitivity, I think, when you hear that somebody's family member has passed away. Absolutely.
Mercy, definitely.
Thank you. That's the word. Yeah. Rooji.
It's empathy, ultimately, isn't it? And it's a lack of understanding of the challenges that convert to Islam goes through. And the extension of that, James, I think you mentioned like the weddings and like the drinking environment. The convert to Islam is the best person to make a judgment out as to how to navigate those scenarios. And they don't need your input in that. And you don't actually understand all of the dynamics and nuances of a particular situation that they're in and their family dynamics in order to even make a comment on that. So, it's something that converts to Islam themselves really need to work out how to navigate in their own particular family dynamics. These comments are very, very unhelpful, to be honest with you.
First of all, I'm really sorry to hear of your experience, Amanda, and also James, like some of the comments and some of the things people have said to you. Literally just like, I'm gobsmacked. I'm like, why would anybody say this? And it comes from a lack of knowledge. As born Muslims, it's, we sometimes think we're trying to help and we're doing the sort of, we're on the moral high ground. And at times I think people think this way, but actually you do more damage, like you said. I can't imagine anybody saying to a born Muslim, you've only got 3 days to mourn the loss of your parent. I can't imagine, right? Imagine, like, sometimes they, like you said, might be coming from a good place, but is it necessary on a human level? If we were to take just religion or cultural background out of it, on a human level, just hold space, be there for that person on that level. And Sheikh Bilal just made a really good point about, if you don't let converts navigate their own family dynamics, we don't have lived experience of your challenges. So we ought to trust that you will navigate that and ask for support and help from the people that you need it from, as and when you need it. And often, I think what's happened, especially the culture online, there are a lot of people coming into Islam, especially with what's happened over the last couple of years in Palestine. People are coming into Islam and openly sharing their journeys into Islam. And what that does is opens the floodgates for people to feel that they can comment on every aspect of their journey now, whether it's wearing hijab, whether it's, the way that they're reading the Quran or interpreting it, whatever it might be, their first time at the mosque, doing wudu. These things are being shared more explicitly online than they ever have been, right? And so people, born Muslims, feel that, oh, okay, I can weigh in my 2 pence now. And they're adding to that without the proper education or understanding. Even if it's well intended, it can drive people away. I saw a video of a sister that's converted to Islam. Her husband's not Muslim. She's got children. She's probably in her 40s or 50s. And she was asking, am I wearing the hijab properly? And I just think, gosh, it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous to do this on an open platform. And what I do is when I see these videos, immediately tag New Beginnings. And I go, guys, did you know about this charity? They can support you. And I do it from the born Muslim perspective rather than giving my advice. I tell them and I signpost them, you can get proper help here. But what I see in the comments is, oh, sister, but your hijab should be longer. Oh, but sister, you shouldn't be wearing it like this and you can't pin it this way. And and your dress isn't appropriate. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, let the woman breathe. Like she's just coming to Islam. The Quran was revealed over 23 years. It wasn't overnight that everything was adopted. And we have this conversation in my family. A lot of the women in my family don't wear hijab and they struggle with it. And I tell them, I'm like, this is how Allah revealed the Quran. And everyone's on their own journey. But when you're completely brand new, it can be so detrimental to hear these things that are you haven't grown up with like the way we have. We've grown up with this knowledge and the understanding. And even if we didn't fully understand it in detail, we still had our elders and people in our community doing the same thing, whereas you guys didn't. So I think it's very dangerous for born Muslims to be giving advice without the proper knowledge and authority to be able to do so, even if it's well intended.
It stems from a lack of empathy, not a lack of knowledge. Because even people that have knowledge, they've made the same errors, and it doesn't need knowledge; it just needs empathy.
Wow.
Just one short incident that I'll share. It was on one of these Facebook groups, Nonverts to Islam, or whatever it's called. Thousands of people in there. Majority of them probably are converts to Islam, to be honest with you. And there was a sister. I think she was in the US. She posted a picture on Eid. She said, "Oh, I don't have enough money to buy any clothes," and it was fairly modest. She didn't have a scarf on, but she just wanted to show this picture of her Eid dress. And oh my God, some of the comments, and some of them are from sisters as well. Like, sister, you need to go. We shouldn't be showing your picture, and you need to be covering up, and you don't need to be exposing it. Some of the guys, why are you on Facebook looking at pictures of women and then telling her that she needs to cover up? And she already explained, I don't have any money to buy any other clothes. Doesn't have the financial means to buy those clothes. The online sphere it's just a cesspit, for any converts listening to this, just ignore, turn off the comments, ignore the comments, because people, they're really lacking empathy on those platforms.
Sheikh Bilal, what you were saying about it's the convert Muslim who needs to be the one to decide how to navigate these issues. That is such an important thing. And I think I'm going to put this as one of my points that I really want Muslims who aren't converts to understand. We have a tendency to infantilize new Muslims. You hear this whole thing, oh, I'm a baby in Islam. Okay, no, you're a new Muslim. You're not a baby. You're not a child. You're an adult. And you have adult intellect, and you've made what we would hope is a reasoned decision to embrace Islam. You haven't done this because somebody forced you to, I would hope. I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody's experience, but most converts who I know have done at least a modicum of research before they've come to Islam. And we know our families, we know our family dynamics more than anybody else, because we were raised in those families. And we know, take Christmas as an example. And we have talked about this on another podcast, spoke about celebrating non-Muslim holidays. And I think this segues into what James was talking about, segues from that. It's not, take Christmas as an example, because that holiday is coming up, or any holiday where families are going to gather, be it funerals, weddings, whatever. We are the only people who know whether we can navigate that gathering successfully. And nobody else who has never been invited to one of those gatherings or has an experience with that type of gathering should be telling us what to do and whether we can go or not, and whether it's halal or haram. Or, James, you mentioned that you have asked some scholars about things, but asking scholars from overseas, they're not qualified to answer because they don't know the context. The great scholars of the past would even not have answered the question because they would have said, well, I don't know your context, and scholars nowadays, if they're willing to give a fatwa for what goes on in the UK and they're, sitting in their madrasa in, wherever they are, they shouldn't be doing that, So we have a tendency, as I said, to infantilize new Muslims, to say that, oh, they need help, they need mentoring, they need this, they need that. Yes, we need mentoring, absolutely. And we do need educating, but we also should be trusted to be adult enough to navigate our own journey. And we should be trusted to ask for help when we need it. One thing that I would say is that I really appreciate it when Christmas rolls around and my friends message me to ask how I'm doing, even now, 20 some odd years into this journey, I will have friends message me to say, hey, I know this could be a hard day for converts. Do you want to come around mine for coffee? Because they know that in my tradition, my whole family would be gathering right now. And I'm not doing that. That kind of thing is really appreciated. But calling somebody up to make sure that they're not planning to go and sit and do Christmas at their mother's house because it's haram for them now that they're Muslim, no, that's not helpful, And what if they are going? Let them go. Let them do that journey on their own. Let them navigate that space on their own. You're not responsible for them participating or not participating. That's something that I did want to sort of get across after what James had said and after what Sheikh Bilal said about it's only converts who can navigate these spaces.
I think this ties into the last point that you want to discuss. I think, James.
A nice little segue there, Amanda. Thank you. The importance of particularly converts who have come to Islam when it comes to holidays, Ramadan, Eid. It's really important to kind of bring over, your culture with it. So, for example, when you have when we have Christmas in this country, there's decorations, there's all sorts of bits and bobs that you don't see out in the street. If you went out into the street, okay, you get the occasional house that sticks, all sorts of things in the front garden and all the rest of it, but they tend to be the exception. But what you'll find is people will decorate their houses to make themselves feel more Christmassy. And if you go to any country outside the UK, they've got their own way of celebrating Eid and celebrating Ramadan. If you go to Turkey, they put lights up in the trees. They put lights up in the street. There's a Ramadan Mubarak that they hang between minarets. It's all lit up. But if you're only coming from the UK context, you're like, oh, well, those are Christmas lights. And it's like, well, no, it's a Muslim country. That's kind of, they're Muslim lights over there, Ramadan lights or whatever you want to call them. What people don't tell converts when you come to Islam is how to celebrate at all. So what can happen is you can end up in your house, which is full of non-Muslims apart from yourself. It's Eid. You've gone all the way through Ramadan. There's nothing in the house that signifies that it's Ramadan. There's nothing in the house that signifies that it's Eid. It's just a normal day, and you go down, you do the morning prayer on Eid, and everyone goes off to their families, and they all go off and do their thing, and it can be a very lonely time. You've taken the day off work potentially. If it falls on a weekday, you haven't got anyone to mix with. So what you do, and this is what I ended up doing, was basically you go, oh, well, I'm supposed to be celebrating this day. How do I do that for anything else? And it's like, well, with Christmas, there's no end of reminders that it's Christmas if you go down the shop. There's no end of reminders. They put on all sorts of different things. So you really need to focus on bringing the meaning of Ramadan home. Stick up lights, go and buy the tacky stuff that you can buy and pop it up all over the place, because that'll be your reminder when you get home and you don't really feel like, it's halfway through Ramadan, I'm losing my energy, I don't really feel like it's Ramadan. But actually you get into the house and it's like, it's nice, alhamdulillah. this is really good. So important to make our celebrations just basically as good as any other celebration. And you bring other people in, you bring your family into it. You never hear as much from people checking up on you. Are you celebrating Eid? It's the opposite of what Amanda was saying. It's like kind of you're not getting the phone call of saying, "Oh, are you having a good Eid? Is that working out for you?" But you get the phone call like kind of like, "Oh, you're not going to have Christmas dinner, are you?" Well, it's just food. It's just a meal. I'm not off the church. It can be so important to put the joy into Ramadan and Eid.
You mentioned about like Christmas dinner and these meals and celebrating all these festivities. How I always thought about it as a born Muslim was it's not the meal itself, it's what it represents. And that's how I've always viewed it. And I think, I'm trying to give grace to my fellow born Muslims now a little bit, because for us, it's almost like we don't do that. This is haram for us. And we've always been brought up with that. So it's we have to unlearn the unhealthy behaviors that we have around this for our convert brothers and sisters. It's a real learning curve on both sides, really. I've never thought about picking up the phone on Christmas Day. And I know so many convert brothers and sisters. I've just never thought about it until now you've mentioned it. I think we get so busy. Because for me, we've never really, like growing up, we didn't do anything on Christmas. It's just another day. Whereas it's not another day for you guys and your families. And, and it can be challenging. So I think just on that, thank you for bringing it up, because it's something I'm going to try and implement. But for those people that are listening, one of the things A New Beginnings has taught me is to open my door up and make room at the table for convert brothers and sisters especially through Ramadan. So this year, this year, this year I opened my home up to convert sisters, and I actually hosted my first ever convert specific iftar in my home, and it was just like a one dish party, and I loved it. It was any sisters that could come are welcome. I've got a very small space, but it was so beautiful to just break bread together. And I think as born Muslims, we need to do that more people need to be like, let's make space at the table on Eid day. I couldn't open the house up because I go to my mum's and it's not my house. So I was like, is there any actual physical room on the table? Are we going to make people sit on the floor? Which is okay too. But it wasn't my space to speak. But because I've got my own space, I'm like, everyone's welcome. So for those people that are listening and the sisters that are in West Yorkshire, follow me and Rooji the Foodie, and let's plan the next iftar together. And Amanda, we hope we can fly you over. Get you out of Japan, get you into Yorkshire. And inshallah, we can break bread together during the next one.
I wish a lot more people would do things like that, to be honest, with regards to, even just, it doesn't have to be a whole meal, even just picking up the phone, especially Eid. I think Ramadan and Eid are very hard. And Eid, making sure, like, if you know that somebody is a new Muslim, don't assume that they've got something to do, because they probably don't on Eid, And I think a lot of people, like, for me, a lot of people assume I've got loads of plans on Eid. I'm usually planning stuff for other converts, and it would be nice to see other people step up and say, hey, maybe we should be welcoming people into our home. I think we have run out of time, haven't we? So it's been such an interesting discussion. And I want to say thank you to you both for coming on today. Do you have any just last final thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh, that's great. It's been great. Thanks for having me.
I just want to reiterate what I said earlier about heritage Muslims just being more compassionate for the convert journey. And again, just opening up their homes, their hearts and their spaces to people that have different experiences to them when it comes to Islam. And thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today, both.
Well, I'll just add one thing as well. If you are a convert out there and you have experienced like kind of a lonely Eid, don't be afraid of inviting anybody and everybody to share food with yourself, because especially non-Muslims, they have probably never been to anything to do with Eid, and it's one of those things where you can share a good time with people, and it's very rare that people will turn down a free lunch. Make sure that you bring the joy to yourself and create it, because other people are busy doing the same thing, but don't be afraid. So just go out there and try. Something will come together. You'll be all right.
Thank you, Rooji and James, for sharing your very insightful experiences and questions and bringing up these important topics. If you want to know more about what New Beginnings is doing and our future plans, then please follow us on social media at Beginnings UK on all social media platforms, or you can email us via the link in this podcast description.
That's it for another episode of the New Beginnings podcast. We do hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share on social media and with family and friends.
Yes, please do share and subscribe. We're on all major podcast platforms. Inshallah, we'll see you next time.
I look forward to it, but for now, thank you for listening.
Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.